just express yourself with an emoji or just saying, this is my first time. Let's see if we have people joining us for the first time. Can we indicate? Okay, so Tim, you can help me. Do we have any? Okay. Oh, Ayomide. Ayomide is one of our facilitators today. You are powerfully welcome. Oh, okay. Uzoma, Anita, I recognize you. Welcome. Rita Owodo, apologies if I didn't pronounce your surname, correctly. You're powerfully welcome. Omolabake, oh, powerfully welcome. Awesome, awesome. This is interesting, and we even have our first timers coming in early. We appreciate you. In the course of the training, we will still be talking more about the Thriving Enterprise Development Center. But today, the program is in honor of our president, Pastor Mayokun Oriofe. She's a voice that speaks to so many generations. And in the last 8 years, we've done this. Her birthday is not a day, it's a season. So we're in the season of Pastor Mayokun Oriofe birthday season, all right? So it's a back season. And it comes with a lot of, it's an aggregate of activities. So we're privileged to have, as one of the activities in honor and celebration of the great impact that the Lord is using her to do in so many lives, so many businesses. And so this is about her. So I lend my voice to all of the TEDC family, all of our facilitators, and everybody coming on board to say happy birthday to you, Ma. We celebrate you. Indeed, you are a joy of many generations, and we celebrate you. So today, it's going to be an interesting one. In the past 7 years, all that we've had is we usually have a particular topic and we have a facilitator speak to it. But this year is quite different. We have two people, two facilitators who are representing seemingly two different generations. And we want to share knowledge, cross-carpet wisdom, all right? Because the two generations have peculiar strengths and weaknesses. And so we will share our strength and see how we can leverage on it and how we can manage our weaknesses so that we can both learn from one another. And so I am going to start by reading the profile of our two facilitators. And when I'm done with that, I will immediately, give the floor to the first facilitator. And so she's going to speak for like 20 minutes. We'll have our second facilitator speak to the topic. But another tweak to this year's program is that we're going to give room for our participants to share their own talks. So what that means is that as the paper is being delivered, please be putting your questions together. It's life, place, and workplace experience, so it cuts across. And so this year, it is full participation. So we have full participation from our attendees as well as our facilitator. All right. So the first person I'm going to read her profile is Tosin Alexander Idowu. She's an HR consultant, a creative thinker, and a dynamic extrovert with over a decade of hands-on HR leadership, from organizational restructuring to business process transformation. She has worked with leading SMEs, including Rough and Tumble, Dan1 Nutricia, and a whole lot of other organizations. She's a board member and a business advisor. And interestingly, she's a mother of 3 nations, triplets, that God gracefully gave her at the age of 46. And so she's going to bring a lot of depth and wisdom, real world insights into our discussion today. So she has interacted a lot with the younger generation, both from workplace perspective and life perspective. And so, ladies and gentlemen, can we put our hands together to appreciate Tosin Alexandra Idowu? Can we express our clap in the chat room? She won't come up now, but let's just appreciate her. Let's jam our hands together, express your emojis, welcoming her. Wow, awesome. Yeah. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Awesome. You're welcome, Tosin. Okay, our second facilitator. All right. Very energetic young lady, Ayomide Adefeyinti. She's an investment banker. She's a financial strategist. She's a relationship builder. She understands numbers. But more importantly, she understands people, all right? And so that's one of the reasons why she's coming on board. From structuring financial solutions to nurturing meaningful client relationship, Ayomide embodies the balance between technical intelligence and emotional intelligence, which is very critical. A passionate learner with a drive for growth, she represents the voice of excellence with evolution. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, can we express our hand, our clap in the chat room with a rounding welcome for Ayomide? All right. Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Ayomide, you are powerfully welcome. Powerfully welcome. So let's relax. Just be open as we I'm trying to check the chat room, okay, to see whether, okay, so we have our celebrants in the house. Mom, you're powerfully welcome. So ladies and gentlemen, we have the celebrants in the house. Can we equally give a rounding applause? We're still going to hear her voice at some point, but we need to give honor to whom honor is due. So let's raise our emojis, our hand, every form of expression, welcoming this woman of grace, great woman of honor, of impact, joy giver. Can we welcome her? Wonderful, wonderful. We have our president here. From the fullness, from her fullness, we have received joy and a lot of amazing testimony. Success story that DC has recorded is from the insight of this great woman. Mom, we celebrate you. We thank God for life. We thank God for his hand upon your life. We celebrate your season. This is birthday season and is loading. Thank you, Ma. All right. So without wasting our time, we will go straight into the conversation of today, whereby we are harnessing vintage wisdom. I want you to know that for each generation, all right, there is an endowment of wisdom that comes from God. And we're not here to say that a particular generation is better than one another. Even God, in introducing himself, God introduces himself as a God of generations. He says, I'm the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. So we recognize that God does not change, but God accelerates, all right, generation, advancing them towards his divine purpose. And so we're here today to share minds together. And I'll be calling on Tosin right now. Let me see whether she's already made the co-host. So Tosin, you can come up. I think you have the floor. So okay. I will prompt you when you have like 5 minutes. I will prompt you in the chat room. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Tosin once again as she delivers her paper.
Okay. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Let me put this in slideshow.
Yes, we can. We can hear you. Yes.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to apologize for my voice. I really do hope that, like I said, God's hand will rest upon my voice today, and I'll be able to engage powerfully with all the energy I've got. So I want to join my voice with everyone to say congratulations to Pastor Mayokun Oriofe. God bless you, ma'am. And the Lord would increase you more and more, even as you age gracefully in Jesus' name. Okay, it's such a privilege to be invited to come speak at this annual lecture, and it's exciting. So we're looking at the topic.
Hello?
Can you still hear me?
Hello?
Hello?
Yes, we're hearing you. I think we need to mute.
Hello?
Please,
Okay,
admin, can you help us
hello.
mute everyone except the speaker?
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'll be trying to kind of just give us an intro or just speak generally to this topic from a number of perspectives, just to guide the conversation like I've been informed. So the idea is, how do we harness vantage wisdom across generation, or what does it look like? What is harnessing vantage wisdom across generation? And as I reflected on this, in my mind, I was like, I know it's Pastor Mayokun's annual lecture, but at the same time, I wasn't too sure whether I should go deeply biblical or keep it professional in the workspace. But so by God's grace this afternoon, I would be able to, kind of situate it within biblical context and then relate it to life, relate it to family, relate it to business, and basically across all facets of life, right? Because wisdom, like someone has said in the introduction, and like we know, wisdom is the principal thing. And again, the fact that that word wisdom, right, is a word that depicts the creator himself, God. God is a God of wisdom, and his spirit is a spirit of wisdom, and his spirit allows us, to be like him, right? The spirit enables us to express all of the graces and all of the dimensions that wisdom that he is, entail. So we're going to be looking at that. And a scripture that came to my mind as I thought about across generation is this scripture in First Joel, and then it was repeated in Acts. And I'll just try to anchor around that, where it says, in the last days, which is in the days that we're in, that certain things begin to happen. And it's interesting that in that scripture, it actually talks about different generations. The old, dreaming, the old men dream dreams, the young men see visions, sons and daughters. So there is no demographic barrier, right? God is a God of wisdom and he pours it out. He says there is an outpouring, right? So if that outpouring is coming on every one of us, then there is no generation that can say they are the custodian, if I were to use that word. They say, oh, with us is where wisdom finishes, starts and ends. No generation can say that. So we have that understanding and we have that perspective. Then it helps us to be able to appreciate, every generation and leverage and cooperate rather than compete. So some questions, right, that I would like to start with just to juggle our minds as we look at this discussion. Why do generations misunderstand each other? Why do families lose momentum? Why do businesses struggle with succession? Why do churches experience leadership tension? We're not going to be answering those questions, but they're just questions, and there are many more of them, right? That when we think about the different generations, especially even in the workplace right now, we have about close to 4 generations simultaneously in the workplace, right? And if we're not understanding, if we're not harnessing, if we're not appreciating, right, what everybody brings to the table, it will be very difficult for us to make the kind of progress that we are intended to make or we're designed to make. It will be difficult for us to utilize. It will be difficult for us to enable the potential, right, of everyone, whether they are in their 60s, whether they are in their 20s, or whether they're in the middle age. Everyone is bringing something to the table. So, this topic is very, when I saw it and when Bumi sent it to me, I was like, man, this is very thick. I had to go and be checking Google to say, oh, vantage wisdom, okay? So what does that mean? If I had someone else called, because I put it on my status, and a friend called me and said, Tosin, this topic is very serious. In fact, tell me what. I said, when you come, you will know when you join the lecture, you will get to know the different dimensions that this is speaking to. So I tried to kind of break it down. So what is vantage and what is wisdom? Okay, vantage talks about position. It talks about a positioning, a point, a perspective that helps you to gain advantage. It's actually from the word advantage. So when you hear vantage wisdom, it is almost like the wisdom that puts you at an advantage, right? And then wisdom we know is the application of knowledge, right? Wisdom can also be described as insight applied over time. So we kind of put those two words together. We want to say that, okay, the vantage wisdom is speaking to a wisdom that has got certain perspective, has a broad perspective that gives it an advantage, if you understand what I mean. So, and we're talking about it within the context of generations, right? So if we look at it, you would then say, what advantage, right, does the wisdom of the old bring to the table? What advantage does the wisdom of the young bring to the table? What advantage does the middle-aged guys, what advantage do they bring to the table? And just a few, right? Because of course I know, excuse me, I know it's very short time and I just want to just speak to this to just give us some context and then allow my colleague, the second speaker, also to share certain context before we then begin to engage in questions and answers. So just a few. So one, there's something about the old or the elderly is that because of the experience that they have by reason of age, right? They have something you can call pattern recognition. They have seen a whole lot of things. They almost know the cycles of life because they've seen recessions at least not less than twice in their lifetime. They've seen economic booms. They've seen how governments come and governments go. They've seen how policies change, and how it affects and impacts businesses. They've seen, how families rise and how families fall. They've seen quite a lot. So they kind of are able to come to say to you, this thing that you are doing, this particular thing that you're saying, yes, I could agree with you, but, have you thought about this and these and these as the consequences? So that is one of the things that the elders come with, from a vantage position, the kind of insights that they bring to the table. And then what do we see that the middle-aged people come with? Oh, yes, they come with a lot of strength, because they're still at that point in their lives when they're probably in their 30s, 40s. They have a lot of energy. They want to execute. They want to achieve. They want to go in and go, 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 go. So in their wisdom, there is a strength of execution that they come to the table with. And then the youth, of course, in this day now, is no longer millennial, it's Gen Z, right? Gen AI, Gen Beta. I heard the Gen Beta is now the ones that are just being born. And at 2 years old, they can pick up your phone. And while you are still struggling to find YouTube, or while you're still struggling, they know the icon. It is just amazing, how they're just able to navigate. They just look at it and something in their brain just knows that that's what I'm supposed to, and they just keep click, 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 and they're moving. So they bring to the table innovation. They ask a lot of questions, right? They say, "Why have you been doing like this or for all this generation? Can we not? Can we do something different, right? Can we change it? Can we not, stay in this status quo, right?" That's their mindset. That's what they bring to the table, right? They bring disruption. They want to just change. They're mobile. They're in their thinking, in their features, they're just on the move, right? So recognizing what every of this generation, brings, and the fact that every one of them has a strength. Of course, it's got some blind spots as well. We know that by virtue of the elders, there is an inheritance that is passed from one generation to another. And the elderly would want to kind of hold on to the traditions, right? The family values. They want to kind of entrench those things that their fathers passed on to them, the inheritances, right? That is the posture of the elderly. But we know that innovation without inheritance, right, is dangerous. And inheritance without innovation in itself can be kind of stagnated. And so the blend of both is what is going to help us even in this season, right? As the people that are living in this at this time in the aeons of the world, if I were to put it that way, this technology age, this digital age, we need to understand that there is innovation, yes, ongoing, and it's like at the speed of thought, right? But yeah, there are still inheritances, there are still traditions of the fathers, and like Bumi said when she was talking, God is a God of generation. God knows that technology must advance. God knows, in fact, it's prophetic that these things will continue to hasten even as the days continue to go. But God is not, God is not surprised. And God's expectation from generation 1 to generation 2 to generation 3, for all generations, the expectations of God remain the same, irrespective of what is happening, irrespective of the innovation, irrespective of the new thought. And remember also that he is the author. He is the wisdom himself. He is the one that pours these things out. And it's all for the advancement of his own plans, of his own design. So everything is working together. So what beholds us, how it beholds us as people, is where we're having to say to ourselves, I need to align myself and appreciate, what everyone brings to the table. So let's look at a few strengths and blind spots. So we talk about the older generation, they come with experience, but they have the blind spot of being resistant to change, right? They just want to stay there, not moving, oh, no, this thing is too hard, this technology is too much, and all of that. The younger people, right, the mid guys come with the drive, but they also have the possibility of burning out. The younger have the vision and the speed, but as we know, they're so impatient, right? They want to get it. It's microwave. In fact, if there's anything faster than microwave, they want it like now. They want it. They don't want to go through the process. They don't even believe that there should be process. They believe AI should be able to help you, process efficiency, cut the process short by 1 second. Just give it to me 1 second now. But unfortunately, sometimes there's no how AI can do certain things. It will still take you time to cook your food. Beans will still take, there's no, I don't know the amount of fire. Beans will still take no less than, at least at the minimum, 30 minutes, depending on the species of the beans. If technology will reduce the variant of the beans, at least it will still take 30 minutes. Some can take up to like an hour, depending, right? But that's their blind spot. They want it now. You get it, or you don't give me, I move next. And that impacts them in different ways. But what is it? When we're able to harness and understand, that wisdom multiplies when our blind spots are covered. So when we pressure can cook it. I agree with you. Pressure can cook it. Question. Okay, the person that put pressure can cook it. What is the minimum pressure time? I don't think pressure can cook it faster than 30 minutes. Or maybe I'm not, me, I'm middle generation. Maybe my technology has not gone, but I don't think that pressure can cook it in 10 minutes. If it
Not
can,
at all.
I'm interested in knowing. So that I'll probably go and get the device. So interested. So when we understand these things, we see that, our wisdom, when we take advantage of the wisdom across, those blind spots can be covered. We can help support each other. And it's about leveraging, right? It's about cooperation rather than competition. It's about the end goal, whether in the family, whether in the business environment, whether in the church setting, in whatever context we find ourselves in. It's about we achieving the goals. It's about we achieving the objectives, and everyone has something to offer. So I've talked about this biblical blueprint, right? The old men dreaming dreams, young men seeing visions. It's not separation. It's simultaneous. It's a simultaneous outpouring upon every single one of us. And like I said, God did not design generational competition. He's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You want to wonder, how did Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the Bible says that they all dwell together in one tent. Meaning that, yes, they dwell together in a tent at some point. All the three generations were living together. They were waking up together, going out together, coming in together. I want to imagine Father Abraham, talking to, his grandson and, just telling him the stories, sharing the covenant, the promises, and what the things that God has said to him, and God designed it so that there is a convergence, right? It's not a divergence. It's not competition. It's cooperation. It's convergence. So how does this apply, right, within, context? So I've taken three contexts here within the family. How can we put it together? How can we enhance it? Intentional storytelling, where the grandfather's like in my picture right here, where the grandfather is telling the child, right, the stories. Oh, your great grandfather was this, he was that, So let me tell at this point, let me share an interesting story, a personal story, with us. So it was around like 5 years ago. I I like to sing and dance, right? I'm a very bubbly dancing person. And so my husband and I at that time, like Bumi said, we just had our children. We were waiting. And we are just talking one day, and I was like, we need to even get more instruments in the house, take it to church and all that. And my husband said, oh, he likes shekere. I was like, okay, that's good. I think I'll do with tambourine. So we left it there. We went to church and we're just dancing. Of course, we didn't have anything that we could take to church. But as we were worshiping that day, all of a sudden, in my mind, I was seeing Gongo, and I was saying to myself, Gongo, okay. It came again. It just came to me again. Gongo, Gongo. After the service, I told my husband, I said, guess what happened to me today? As we were worshiping, Gongo just kept coming to my mind. And I was like, Gongo. Over the period of 2 weeks after, or maybe a month after, it was then it occurred to me that Gongo, my grandfather, was the head of the drummers in my state, Ondo State. He was the chief Gongo man. That act, that Gongo thing, the next generation, that's my mom, nobody in that lineage picked Gongo, even though it was one of the things my mother inherited. So Gongo was in our house, right, at my mom's place. It was one of our inheritance, and the next generation, which is me, is now seeing it. You know how that you had no clue until I want to believe that God was bringing it back to me to say, you have this thing inside of you, and I don't want it lost. And so you know what I did? I went to my mom's house, went to carry a gongon, and said, I'm going to keep this gongon, and I'm going to start learning how to drum. So I got an instructor, and I began to. And the man was so amazed that as I picked it up, within 1 week, it was as if my ears were trained to hear how to make the thing. I was doing it like the gun. He was so like, how? I then now told him the story. I was like, oh, speaking in English, I'm coming from a generation of people that are gong players. So inside of me somehow, even though I was not aware of it, it was there. And God, was trying to bring that back to me. And of course, over time, I won't bore you with the story. I began to have an understanding of God, what God was trying to say to me by bringing that to me. So God he lives in eternity. We are the ones that break things in time. He doesn't break stuff, right? It's from one generation to another. Bible says one generation shall praise your works to the other. So in family setting, intentional storytelling to happen, grandparents to mentor grandchildren, invite children into planning discussions, and then parents, should not compete with their children's calling, right? Legacy dies when in silence, when people don't tell the stories, when we don't know where we're coming from. And history, interestingly, also repeats itself, right? History repeats itself because if you don't know where you're coming from, it becomes very difficult sometimes when you're going through certain things, you begin to wonder, where is this coming from? But when you know, a lot of times you're able to address it. The good ones, you're able to say, yes, I perpetuate it. But the ones that are not so good, because of course, each generation comes with its own baggages. You say to yourself, no, I'm not taking that. I'm not tolerating this. This has got to stop in my own generation. Okay? How does it then apply, right, to life, in business and leadership? In business, we can begin to build advisory boards across age groups where we're bringing, different age groups to the table, and we're not saying that, oh, this ones don't have what it takes. Well, we're telling the stories, of the founders. We're telling the successes. We're sharing, the mistakes of the past, and we're saying, hey, How are we going to begin to reward that knowledge, make succession, a KPI within the business, right? For example, look at Apple. They thrived because there was complementary strength that was leveraged. Younger person and the middle person, they came together, and vision plus execution. We know where Apple is today. All right? In ministry, in leadership, you can cut it across, invite young leaders into strategy meetings, train the elders in new platforms, let them be able to use the iPads, let them be able to go on ChatGPT, let them be able to use Google, and then we celebrate, publicly the milestones, right? The transition. Hey, grandpa can now Google stuff, and everyone is happy, and we are learning, and there is that unity that is coming across board. Okay, I'm rounding off now to just practical. I got this framework, of practical ways that we can intentionally harness vantage wisdom. The first one is an acronym for harness. HARNESS. H, speaking to humility. If we're going to ever achieve generational convergence, every generation, all the age groups would have to kind of humble themselves. And humility is no longer a church word. Humility is now a boardroom word, because organizations have come to realize that businesses that thrive, that value of humility, in the owners, the founders, the leaders at the top, being able to give listening ears, to what every other person is saying within the team, and not leaving strategy to just being a boardroom top CEO, executive kind of decision or conversation. That humility helps the businesses, because you may never know where the wisdom is going to come from, the idea is going to come from. So humility is critical if we're going to harness vantage wisdom. We're going to have to build active listening systems. We're going to have reciprocal mentorships in place, where the younger are mentoring the old and the old are mentoring the young, right? And you wonder, how can the young mentor the old? Absolutely so. The speed at which they think, the kind of the inclination to technology, right? It requires for older people to learn from them. So learning, it has to be a mutual thing, where the young is learning, the old is learning. So mentorship can be reciprocal. And then we have to preserve narrative preservation, keeping the stories. So when we know the stories, we know what happened 10 years ago, what happened 20 years ago. Do you know that this AI thing, right, is not actually a 5 years conversation? It's not a 10 years conversation. AI has been around for as long as 50 years ago. Of course, now it has just been very now. Everyone is not, the adoption rate is higher, right? There's so much other technologies that are kind of enhancing it and making it work. But the whole concept has been developed, there's been a progressive development of AI, over the last 50 years, and research shows that. So keeping the narrative, it's important, as we move on, from generation to generation. And then we're going to have to empower succession, give the younger generation the tools, the knowledge, the experience that we have. We're going to have to share those things with them. And one of the other ways is where young and old come together and they share projects. Deliberately, setting up systems and initiatives where old and young are together in one team, doing or trying to achieve a particular project. And that when we allow all of these other ones to come into the play, we then see that those kind of projects begin to, see the kind of drive and achievement and progress that was intended. And finally, spiritual alignment. We need to understand that one of the things that the older generation brings to the table is especially if it's from the faith angle, they come with rich experiences and encounters with God. Well, I'm talking to a context that believes in God. So you come with the experiences and encounters of God's faithfulness, of God's dealings, of God's workings in your life, that you're able to then pass on to the next generation and say, guys, yes, so this will happen, AI will happen, all of that. But remember, I was talking to my nephew, which is actually a part of our team, but is outsourced. So he handles our social media and digital marketing, whatever. And I was talking to him, he was telling me all the different things he's done. He's doing about 25. And I was saying to him, he said, oh, that he's put this proposal together, he's working with this, he's trying to get. I said, I hear you, well done. But do you know that business is spiritual? He said, and she told him, business is spiritual. I said, because it's not by the number of proposals you send. It's not by the number of technology you are able to bring to the table. The marketplace has plenty sharks. You want to come in there and take a portion, and you think that it's your AI alone that is going to give you money. It doesn't work that way. You have to carry Jesus there also. As you are giving them the presentation, you are saying, Holy Ghost, talk to them. Let me have favor. Let them remember me. Those are the kind of things that was like, it kind of shocked him, right? To say, I said, but it's a reality, it's the truth. Else you become frustrated. And that's what happens to them. Because they are, impatient, they want it now. They think that let me just write a few proposals and throw it out. Come and ask people like us that have been in this thing for. You can write 100 proposals in a year. God help you. Not one will be responded to. So what are you going to do? For some of them, they go back and quit. Some of them get depressed. They say mental issues. They say so they think they can japa. Now, when they japa, unfortunately for them, the japa system that they are going to is not any better. Because if they just had a little alignment and they could learn from other people, then we know that okay, it's not just about these things that I know, it's not just about my intellect. There are other things. There have been people there in the business world that don't want to leave, that are still making their money. So you just come and think you can take a share of the market just like that because you have intellectual property. Sorry, ain't gonna work. Okay. So in conclusion, imagine 3 people climbing a mountain. One has seen the terrain before. One builds the path. One spots a faster route. These are the 3 generations we're talking about here. One has seen the path, talking about the older guys. The mid guys are able to say, okay, let's do it this way. They are the execution guys. They build all the in-betweens, right? They're able to, and that's let's go it in this that corner. One spots a faster route. Progress only happens when they work together. The future is not built by one generation. The future is actually inherited. We are, like they say, we are children of the past, right? The future is actually inherited, it is interpreted, and can and must be advanced. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Awesome. Please, can we jam our hands together for Tosin? Wonderful presentation. The older generation, their strength is in pattern recognition. And the middle generation, they are about execution. So they are hanging between the 2 generations. How do we establish pattern, leveraging on the innovation that the younger generation has? Awesome. Thank you so much. I like how you broke, the acronym, harness, humility, active listening, reciprocal mentorship. I mean, that kind of staggered me a bit because we usually look at mentorship just from the older people mentoring the younger one. But actually, I thought about it, the kind of gentleness and humility that I apply when my son is trying to teach me, anything regarding social media, is a kind of mentoring, really, because anything he says at that time, I comply. And I remember that I used to tell him, you are too fast. He would say, Mommy, you to try and come up. It's something you can understand. So reciprocal mentorship, all right? preserving the narrative. That is so strong. Remember the children of Israel. TDC, is a Christian-based organization. And so we can share scriptures. One of the things that was very fundamental when God was telling the children of Israel regarding the ark was that they should preserve the showbread, and that they needed to preserve the manna and tell the generation to come that this was what God gave them in the wilderness. And so you need to see that God advances in his course, walking from one generation to the other. And so the custodian, all right, which is the generation that God started with, all right, they can't get to the promised land without the future generation. However, the future generation cannot access by themselves alone. So it's truly a collabo, it's not a competition. Shared projects and spiritual alignment. Awesome. When you said your nephew was saying, business is spiritual. Every time when I tell my son, make sure you pray. Sometimes he looks like that, mommy, you're always spiritualizing everything, but that is the absolute truth. Wonderful, wonderful. All right, without wasting our time, we'll quickly have a response from Tosi and from Ayomide. Ayomide will be speaking, she said, well, more from workplace perspective, but whichever perspective you want to take it. Ayomide, you have the floor.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ayomide Adefensi. I am an investment banker. I'm here to represent the younger generation. I'm an investment banker that started about 2 years ago. Just a quick backstory to me. I was a corporate that got retained. So for me, working with the older generation has been mostly work-based, right? Maybe from church, maybe community, but mostly work-based. I'm just here to change some minds about Gen Zs, because whenever we say Gen Z is synonymous to these people are too lazy. These people procrastinate a lot. These people are just they are entitled. They are this. They are that. So first of all, I'm just going to talk about what vintage wisdom means. I checked Google. Let me know. I checked Google, and what Google said was that vintage wisdom is emotional intelligence that's shaped by decades of navigating people, navigating markets, navigating uncertainties, navigating communities, basically. So for me, vintage wisdom is basically just experience tested by time. It is lessons learned from mistakes that we didn't have to make. Everybody always says experience is the best teacher and you should learn from your mistakes. But one of the things that some of my mentors say is that you don't have to actually make these mistakes. We have made these mistakes for you. It is now your turn to learn from them, right? When I first started work, I thought I understood what pressure was. I thought I understood what being professional is. I thought I understood literally everything. As Gen Z now, we always feel like, we know everything, right? But one thing I realized that was very humbling for me is that there's a difference between being educated, being technical, and also being seasoned, right? And one thing about seasoning is that it comes with time. It comes with experience, right? And whenever these conversations about generational gaps come up, they always sound like debates. They always sound like arguments, right? So we're always hearing, back in our day, so and so happened. We're hearing this generation, you're too this, you're too that. Oh, and me, I'll respond. I'll be like, your generation too. You people are too this. You people are too that. You people don't understand us. You people don't do this. You people don't do that. And before long, it becomes a comparison rather than a conversation. It becomes an argument, right? But you know what? One thing I would like to just say today is that generational problems they're not to be solved. They're not problems to be solved, right? They're perspectives that you need to understand. It's like giving context to things that people don't understand, right? So they're just perspectives that you really need to understand. And every generation is definitely different. Every generation is shaped by the environment that they grew up in. So, the older generation, they were shaped by structure. They were shaped by deep community ties. One thing my dad says a lot is that, the whole the quote that says, um, a society raises the child is raised by the society, right? It all started from the older generation. Um, they have deep community ties. Everything to them is community. Everything to them is structure. They grew up in a time where there was structure. But us, the younger generation, we are shaped by technology. We're shaped by speed. We're shaped by global exposure. We're shaped by, information overload, constant change, adaptability. That's what we are shaped by. But like neither is wrong, but you just have to understand that, oh, there are different contexts, and these contexts will shape like our behavior towards one another, right? So most generational tension doesn't really come from values, right? Because I'd like to think that, especially if you have been raised in a Christian home, or whatever religion that you practice, I'd like to think that most of the values that our parents gave us, it transcends the values, and the wisdom transcends. So I don't think that I don't think that generational tensions come from values. I think it just comes from assumptions. It comes from stereotypes, right? So I just want to just say a few things about what we can learn from each other. For me in the workspace, one thing I have learned from my bosses, I work directly with the COO, and why I brought up my background in investment banking is because like I said, I was a copper that just was retained, right? I was a copper that was retained, and that basically makes me an entry level staff. So for my bosses to trust me enough to be able to do high level and key transactions. I recently completed a very huge transaction for a bank, that's Sterling Bank's public offer. It was such a huge deal. I was the transaction officer, so I had to talk to the Securities and Exchange Commission. I had to talk to the CBN. I had to talk to so many things and other stakeholders. So that was such a high pressure transaction for me. But one thing I learned from my bosses at work, one thing I even learned from some of my mentors in church while I was doing this transaction was patience. One thing I learned was patience. One thing I learned was the quality of my service. One thing I learned was the quality of my work. I learned long-term thinking. I learned relationship building. One thing I love, I've been saying one thing a lot, but part of the things that I love about the older generation is relationship building. Um, I can call my boss now and I'll be like, oh, this person is on a transaction with us. And they're like, oh, I know this person. And he calls the person immediately. And he's like, oh, I know this person. They have informal conversations that bring formal transactions to the table. So they understand loyalty, they understand stability, and they understand patience and commitment, which are key takeaways from the older generation. For the younger generation, we carry adaptability. We have gotten to the AI stage in life. We have gotten to the digital space, and everything is changing. Everything is fast moving. Before now, AI was just for like the military bases and just some private organizations, but now AI is for everybody. AI has been made public, right? So one thing that we bring to the table, I know we bring to the table, is emotional awareness. The talks about mental health and work-life balance, work-life optimization started with this generation, started with the younger generation. We're open to change, and we have the courage to question systems, to say, oh, why is this like this and why is this like that, right? But imagine a world where all the experience of the older generation was met with like a fresh perspective. So all the traditions of the older generation was met with innovation from us, the younger generation. It's not conflict. It's not competition. It is balance, right? So I'm just going to go through some practical ways to bridge the gap between generations. So first of all, for me, I think that we all have to listen to understand and not listen to correct. right? So this is very, very important. Sometimes with the older generation, they listen to respond, while us as the younger generation, we listen to challenge them, to just talk. So one thing I have learned about arguments, and another thing I've learned about communication, open communication, is that you have to listen, and you don't just listen to respond, to correct them, to say, oh, you are wrong. You listen to actually understand, right? So when we all listen to understand, right, we actually win. There has been actual communication between the both generations, right? So another thing I know that Mrs. Alexander Idowu mentioned, it was sharing stories. So for me, it's sharing stories that actually humanize us. So when the older generation, I know that whenever they share, even though sometimes I'm like, okay, when they share the stories of when they I've heard stories of when they trekked miles and miles to get to school, stories of what they have endured. It creates gratitude. Like, I'm grateful for the challenges that they had to face and they had to overcome, um, to give me a better life, right? So I'm so grateful for that. But for the younger generation, when we share what we are navigating, right, it creates empathy. So the older generation were able to understand the younger generation better. It creates empathy, it creates sympathy, and that empathy is going to dissolve all the stereotypes that the generations have about each other. So another thing I'm going to say about bridging this generational gap is that another thing I'm going to say about bridging generational gap is that I'm so sorry about that. Another thing I'm going to say about bridging the generational gap is that you should be teachable at any age. Teachability doesn't stop at 30. It doesn't stop at 40. It doesn't stop at 50. It doesn't even stop at 100. It never stops. It only stops when the person passes on. Teachability should not expire. You should be able to, as the older generation, learn from the younger ones. And also from the younger ones, you have to be able to learn from the older generation as well. So you can have experience, but you also need to be open, right? And you can have like the innovation that the younger generation has, but you can still be respectful, right? So growth is not age dependent, right? It is humility dependent. You have to be able to humble yourself, to learn from each other, transgenerational wisdom, right? So I'm just going to say, the Bible even also talks about how iron sharpeneth iron, right? And how one person sharpens another. So sharpening, when you sharpen a knife, right? Two different iron materials are hitting each other, but they're not destroying each other. They are sharpening each other. Is that friction? That friction is what causes the sharpening. So for me, friction is not destruction, right? The friction that will go on between both generations is refinement, right? And for me, generations should sharpen each other. So I'm just going to say again that generational wisdom is not meant to be trapped within one generation. It's meant to be passed on. And the older generation also need to understand, but I also think that maybe they understand that these values and this wisdom, they need to be able to pass it on to the next generation. And the next generation also needs to be open to basically open to learning. They need to be able to be open to learning from the older generation. So I'm almost done. I'm just going to say that in my own life, I have learned powerful things, wonderful lessons, great lessons from the people that have come before me. A lot of meaningful contributions that I have made have come because like I was willing to speak up. I was willing to talk to my bosses. I was willing to talk to my superiors. I was also willing to talk to people at church, talk to people in my community. A lot of the meaningful contributions that I have made all through my lifetime have come from me wanting to speak up respectfully, right? So bridging the gap for me is not about silence, right? It's not about superiority. It's about mutual respect. So it's recognizing that, oh, this wisdom did not start with us and it will not end with us. It is transgenerational. You need to be able to give that wisdom to the next generation. So I'm just going to close by saying that bridging the generational gap and harnessing this vintage wisdom is not about making people think the same way. You don't want people to think the same way. You don't want people to um, you don't want people to think the same way. You know, our value is in our differences, right? But you need to understand that wisdom did not start with us. We need to understand wisdom did not start with us and it will not end with us. We need to be open to being teachable, right? Innovation would not end with us, right? And the generational gap is generally, it's not closed by agreement, right? It's closed by respect, by mutual and earned respect. So I hope that we're able to have better conversations about generational gaps. And thank you so much for listening to me.
Awesome. Wow. Can we jam our hands together?
Wow.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Ayomide. Thank you so much. We are a generation that is shaped by structure and system. Yours is with speed and adaptability. Wow. You said it's not about competition, it's just having perspective. I think that is just so deep. All right. Beautifully put together, quite relevant and apt. Thank you so much, Ayomide. More grace. All right. So quickly, we'll go into the question time because our time is well spent. It's not looking like we've done 1 hour at all. It's like we should go on and on. All right. So my first question goes to Tosin. I have a question here, and then I will now later turn it over to Ayomide for her perspective. The question is saying that there is so much intense pressure in the area of mental health, and that young people are dealing, I mean, so much. Before you have conversation here and there, you're having, people always dealing with something, anxiety, and it's almost looking as if it's fashionable to be broken and be dealing with something. And so somebody is asking that, in our own, I mean, while we were growing up, it's still our time, we're very much on the platform. So then let me say when it was our own time, that we had pressures too. I mean, and it's looking like at that time, there wasn't even so much support from technology. So you have to do a lot of walking, trekking, thinking, no AI support, yet people were not really breaking down mentally. So what is happening now? So I would like both of you to speak to that. So over to you, Tosin. Then when you are done, I would like to have Ayomide's perspective.
Okay.
Tosin, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
If you project your voice a bit more, you'll be more audible.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, we can now.
Is it better? Okay, great. Okay, so pressure has always been there, right? That's my opinion. Pressure has always been there in family, in life, in work. I think that what Ayomide said about the awareness and the social media advantage, or we'll put it that way, advantage, which is not going to be an advantage, is one of the things that probably is kind of accentuating this issue of mental health. The reason I say that is because personally, I have a story that as a teenager, I had mental health issues, and it was very deep. it was deep, so deep that I became psychotic, depressed to the point of psychosis to the point where I literally entered the bush. If we literally, not by sacred talk, they went to pick me there. What was the issue? It was family oriented, family dysfunction, that kind of made me go back to school. And I was thinking and I was crying. And of course, at the time, there was no social media, there was no Facebook. Maybe we had, I'm not even sure we had, no, there wasn't even there. There wasn't even cell phone. But it was just my family that knew. There was no opportunity, there was no place for me. Family knew, church community knew, and that was the support system that kind of helped me to recover. So it's not as if mental health, depression is new. But I think, like she said, the social media avenues for people to express and all of that. And then if one person says it, right, other people, any slight opportunity or slight discomfort, everybody just begins to ride on that trend. And I think that's just what is happening with regards to this mental.
Okay. Thank you, Tosi. All right, Ayomide, can we have you?
Okay, yes. So I actually see what you mean, Ma, by when people say now anxiety is fashionable. Everybody's anxious. Everybody has mental health issues. People are always going through something. I understand what that means, but maybe it's not that anxiety is fashionable. Maybe it's because people are finally allowed to admit that they are anxious instead of pretending that everything is fine. So, like I had said before, there has been more awareness about your mental health, right? So in the past, I know in the past, people often kept things to themselves. So they just kept things to themselves and they pushed through. But now there has been more awareness about mental health. So people are just more open about stress, about anxiety, about depression, about all these mental health challenges. So I don't think it's becoming more fashionable or everybody is just I don't think everybody is just talking about it just because. I just think that maybe it's just becoming more visible and more acknowledged. These things were things that the older generation also went through. But now, the younger generation is more vocal about it. So I think it's still to the same degree, but we're just more vocal about it. That's why it might seem like all of you just have mental health problems. So every
All
time
right.
something is always wrong with you. So I think that is it.
Okay, thank you very much. So let me add my own question. So can it be said that, to a degree, mental health has become an escapist mentality, especially with maybe more younger generation, that you are asking them to come and do house chores, and they are saying, no, mommy, that is affecting my mental health. The way you are screaming and shouting is affecting. Do you think that if you draw that knowledge, that awareness too far, it now becomes an escapist mentality for young people? Because now when it is accepted and everything is about mental health and nobody is now taking responsibility or knowing that at times you need to push through, in that pendulum, don't you think that is becoming excessive? So how do we achieve a balance? So let me start with Ayomide, then I'll get back to Tosin.
Okay. So mental health for me isn't about like escaping reality. It isn't about like escapism. It's about recognizing and managing all the stress that comes with it, all the anxiety and the depression, so that people can function better in life. But I think there's some nuance to it, right? So sometimes discussions about mental health, it can be misused as a way to maybe justify avoiding responsibility and justify, you tell somebody to come and do house chores and they're citing their mental health issues. You tell somebody to come and do their work, at an organization, they're citing mental health issues. It just can't be all the time. So sometimes mental health, the mental health conversation is sometimes a way to avoid responsibility. It can be used as a way to avoid responsibility or maybe uncomfortable situations. So, but I feel like that is very different from true mental health, right? So mental health is sorry, I'm so sorry. Okay. Yes. So mental health is healthcare, basically. Mental health is healthcare. It isn't escapism. Mental health is learning to face, life with the right tools. So I think you're correct that maybe the younger generation, maybe or maybe everybody, we need to learn that, mental health shouldn't be a way to escape life, right? So you are living with mental health. We are living with mental health issues. You're not letting the mental health issues consume you or be your
Okay.
entire personality. So I think, yeah, that's the angle I'm going to come
Awesome.
from.
All right. Thank you. Okay, Tosi, are you with us? Okay, so maybe while Tosi is trying to get her network, so I'm not sure if from my end, Tosi was not very audible. Was it from my end or it was a general experience? Please, can I get your response? How was her audio so
It
that,
was a general one. I think she has, there must have been
okay, okay, but can't unmute. Oh, apologies. Okay, please, admin. Tosin is saying she can't unmute. I think I had that experience at some point. So please kindly help her. Okay, well done. All right, the next question I want to ask is in the area of parenting. And somebody is saying that more than ever before, parenting is really becoming challenging. And that the thought was that with the advancement in terms of light, knowledge, and technology, everything is supposed to be made easy. So he's looking at the more other things are being made easy, the more parenting is becoming challenging. Technology is standing in the way of parenting. So maybe I can understand this person. I hardly, when I was a child and my mom is going out, the way I cry, in fact, my mom used to dodge anytime I'm going out. But hardly do I see children crying after their parents nowadays. As the mom is going, they say bye because there is one toy, one application, something to. Then for the older ones, all right, having devices has become a distraction. So growing up, I mean, I used to fetch water from the well, then fill the drum every day. And even now that my children, for example, the water is flowing from the tap, it's not that they are going to the well to fetch every day. It's still, a bit of challenge handling something. So the person is saying, it's looking like the more we advance, other things are advancing, but parenting is becoming challenging. Okay, so maybe I might throw that to Tosi. Then from the other perspective, I don't know, I will ask Ayomide too. So let's start. Tosi, let's hear your thoughts.
Okay, thank you very much. So, yes, let me quickly say to the earlier question, I agree with your perspective that this issue of mental health, right, is not the narrative. For me, I think basically I agree with you and I agree with Amide, and I think the narrative has to change. Mental health, like Ayomide said, is actually everybody has mental health. We need to take care of our mental health, right? But the issues of life would always be what they are. And what we need to start, the narrative I think we need to start putting in the picture is the issue of mental resilience. To say, oh, okay, these things would happen, anxieties will come, government policies, so environment will change, so many things will happen, but your ability to demonstrate emotional intelligence and resilience, right, is one of the things that will help you to, navigate the terrain. All right, so to your next question about parenting, I thank God that I have the opportunity to talk like now as a parent, 2 years parent, you know,
We
and I
thank God.
really, thank God, yeah, I really do agree with you that parenting these days can be very challenging, but I think it's because the reason, yes, technology has made it so, or partly so, but I think that people have also, the parents themselves have not been intentional enough. I think that the parents also have not been disciplined enough and intentional enough to not allow technology to cloud their parenting capability, if I were to put it that way. This is why I say, so what you talked about, children crying after whatever, my own children cry after me because as a standing rule in my house, and we made that decision, I only, even at, they're just two, but they only watch television from around 5:30, 6, and they go to bed by 8. So the max time that they have for screen is just max 2.5 hours every day. Sometimes they don't even do it. Sometimes we don't in a week. You know, that discipline of not being on your phone, giving the children the attention, shutting down the devices and focusing on them and let them connect with you, I think is the issue with parents, because even the parents are so obsessed, that's my word, obsessed with their Instagram, with their WhatsApp, their statuses, that they can't drop their phones. So, what do you expect? You're gonna have to you'll be raising children that they see that there's an alternative to you, and you give them, and so it's what it is. We get what we get what we are bargaining for, or what we are input is put in and take out. If you understand what I mean. So
Yeah.
that's it. That's the real
So
issue.
intentional parenting is the way out.
Is the
We
way
have to
out.
be deliberate. Yes. Okay. So let's quickly have your thought, Ayomide, before we take the next question.
Okay. Okay. So, like I said at the beginning when I was speaking, we come from totally different generations. So, I'm going to be speaking from the child's perspective. I don't have any children yet. So, I'm just going to be talking about how you can leverage this technology to maybe get closer to your children, right? So for me, I'm constantly navigating quite a number of things, constant digital exposure, and children are navigating that as well. Information overload, change, and everything. But I think one thing that will help is that I think we have to just learn about the children's world. So you have to learn about their culture, learn about their traditions, not their traditions, rather their technology. You have to recognize that, oh, things are changing, right? And another thing that also helps is communicating effectively. So with my parents now, we sit down and we have open conversations about how maybe their actions have affected me. So I feel like you have to listen actively as a parent. Also, as a child, you have to listen actively. So you can't be saying, oh, it's better you use I statements. So like my mom will say, oh, Mide, I understand that so and so. But instead of, oh, you must do this, you must do that, try to understand things from, each other's perspectives. Then also, it's good when you show empathy, you show respect, you validate feelings, right? And also avoid generational comparison. So instead of saying like, oh, your generation they are this and your generation is that, it's better you can, instead of saying when I was your age this and so and so happened, or back then this was this, or back then that was that. It's better to focus on guidance, right? And I was also going to say that with the age and the era we're at right now, parents as well as children, and I'm talking about maybe teenagers and upwards, they have access to the internet, right? And the internet is a beautiful thing, especially when it's used correctly. They have access to the internet. Um, they have Google. They know that, oh, okay, like Mrs. Alexander Idowu mentioned, she talked about screen time. Now we know that, oh, screen time, too much screen time for children is bad. We know too much technology for children is bad. Even I think I read an article about what's it called? This popular children's show. I think it was Coco Melon, and how
Cocomelon,
Coco
yeah, its
Melon,
impact
yeah,
on the brain.
yes, and how Coco Melon, yes, is harmful for children. So
Mhm.
these things are like public information. I feel like we as maybe parents and also children should be able to leverage on technology, right? You leverage on technology, you leverage on that technology, leverage on the internet to be able to know, you can know, aside from mentorship, aside from speaking with people that you trust about these issues, you can also do your own research, leverage on technology, on that same technology you think is driving you apart, driving you from your children or driving you from your families. You can also leverage on that technology and then you know become
Okay,
better, bond better.
awesome. Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Ayomide. Okay, so I have this question coming from a young person, and I think it's closely related to what Ayomide just said. The person is saying that the older generation sometimes are not authentic. He says, for example, all the parents, virtually all of them came first when they were in school. That when they are sharing the narrative, we hardly get any parent saying, I came last, and this was how I wriggled free. And that so this person is saying that the gap, all right, is being widened because they believe that we're not saying it as it is. Okay, so what will be your advice? Now, I work with young people, and I was one day I'll use the word traumatized when a young person said, "My mom told me that I should not be collecting numbers from boys." He says, "So Auntie Bumi, every contact on my phone is a girl. Maybe you understand now." And I was shocked. So what that means is that he was collecting boys' number and saving it with a girl's name. And I said to myself, I don't want anybody to deceive me this way. Now, the mother was trying to protect her from something, but I think the older generation has not equipped themselves in terms of how do you go about these things in such a way that, for example, it's so difficult. My daughter, by the time I'm trying to say something, she's already finished. She said, "Mommy, I know what you want to say. You want to talk about this. You want to talk about." So more like their head. So what's your advice in terms of how do we engage? Remember in the Bible, the story of Samuel, and when God was calling him, the first time ran to Eli, second time, because remember your presentation, they are used to pattern. So it's like the third time, if you hear that voice, this is what you should say. Speak, Lord, for your servant heareth. Now, if someone is not coming to Eli, that gap is already there. And somebody will fill the gap. So we're losing out because we don't know how to engage. So how can we navigate in that space that we become more authentic and they see us as a go-to rather than social media or any other person that will not help? Over to you, Mrs. Alexander. Okay. Or you want me to throw it out to the audience?
No, you actually called Ayomide first. So I didn't know that the
Oh, did I
question
call
was.
Ayomide? No, I think it's for this question is a younger person asking for the older people to answer. So again, I can give room to the audience. That's part of this year's annual lecture. So please, if we have a parent in the audience that quickly want to respond, all right, you have the floor, but make it very short, apt, and straightforward to the point. All right. So the floor is open. Audience. How do we become more authentic and the younger generation see us as a go-to when they have issues?
Okay, while we're waiting for the audience, the person can then talk after. I
Okay.
think that that person is very correct. Whoever asked that question is the reality. A lot of the older generations, we are not honest, we're not truthful, we're not saying it the way it is. And it's chasing the younger generation from us. I think that if we're going to fill that gap or create that gap, or sorry, bridge that gap, is where we come to the consciousness that we made mistakes, that we got third class, right? That we did WAEC 2 times. It doesn't diminish you as a parent. In fact, you can instead use the stories of your struggles to help your children. And I think that's what it should be. And that is why I also think that this Bible is not just filled with stories of how everybody did well, right? The Bible, the God is very clear. He put the stories there of when people failed, when Abraham had extra clinical affair, when Samson did not listen to his parents. So if we, and especially if we are Christian parents, right, we want to follow the pattern of God to say, let truth and authenticity be our lifestyle. And that is what is going to help us pass on the baton of faith, of truth, of righteousness to the next generation. There's no other way about it. Let's just embrace the word of God and do it the way it is, and not become Lori Raw generation. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Tosin. Wonderful. All right, not sure we're having any expression of interest from the audience. So I'll quickly take the last question because our time is well spent. And this is, so Ayomide, this question is to Ayomide. Parents are raising concern in the area of respect, and that which either way, respect, is not just a core value, all right? That is what will make you draw from the older generation, okay? An example that comes to mind, sharing from the scripture, was the mother of Samuel when she was in the temple and she was expressing her heart. Eli mistook her for a drunken woman. Now, imagine if it was our generation and that accusation, and you accuse a young person wrongly, what the reaction will have been. But the mother of Samuel explained, no, your handmaid is not drunk at this time. She's just pouring her heart. But guess what? The answer to Samuel's mom's petition was still in the mouth of the older generation, which was Eli. And so the question is, just like I tell my children when they accuse me, I say, nobody goes to parenting school. So I'm just doing it based on how I was trained and what I know and how God is helping me. So whatever it is, when we are having such conversation. So how is it that we can uphold, because there is no two dictionary for respect. How, as a generation, can we uphold it? So I'm trying to establish that we will never have a situation whereby the older generation are right. They'll still be wrong. But the old wine, what you need for the future, is in their mouth. So how can we navigate in that space as a young person when it comes to respect? All right. So I can have Ayomide, and I can see that some young people are already in the chat room. So if there's a young generation who wants to lend his or her voice to Ayomide, please, you will have like 1 or 2 minutes to do that. So Ayomide, over to you on the concept of respect. Okay, Ayomide, you are muted.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Okay. Okay, so for me, I think that respect is earned. Respect is reciprocal and it is earned. And for the older generation, right? So respect for them is not talking back. Respect is speaking only when spoken to. Respect is doing what you are told. So for them, for most of the time, they are not to generalize, but most of the time, respect is all of this. But the thing about being forged in different fires, our generation doesn't view respect like that. For example, which I actually have a problem with when um
you see an older person on the road, my mom has told me before that, Ayomide, you greet too much. Is it everybody you see on the road that you greet? So, I see people on the road, I'm greeting them. I enter like a public bus. I enter the bus and I greet everybody that is there. There's this thing that I know that my generation does, is that they don't want to they just pass by. To them, it's not disrespectful. It's just that, oh, they don't know you from anywhere, so why should they really greet you? So I think one thing we need to, like I said at the beginning of this session, is we need to understand like perspective, right? The perspective would change across generations. The perspective is going to change with the generation that you're looking at, right? So I think there are practical ways basically that you can get respect, especially from the younger generation. There are very practical ways, because I think we've noticed now that, oh, all the very beating children and hitting them and shouting at them and doing all of these things, most of the time it won't work. But I think we need to be able to show our children and show the younger generation that, oh, aside from the mother-daughter relationship that we have, the father-son relationship, the father-daughter relationship that we have, I want to be your friend. I want to know you, because one thing I've noticed is that a lot of people are closer to their friends than they are to their mothers or they are to their fathers. And a way we can just bridge this gap is to let the younger generation know that, oh, I'm there for you. I'm here for you.
Okay.
Right. I'm here to listen to your problems. I'm here to
Awesome.
listen to your challenges. Then another thing is about separating behavior from the person's character. So instead of saying stuff like, oh, you are so disrespectful, you are so annoying, you do this, you do that, you are this, you are that, and you're just making that specific character, you're making that specific behavior, rather, the person's character. You can say stuff like, oh, you did this, and this, you did XYZ that I did not like, right? You did this, and this that I did not like. You did something that, I found disrespectful, right? So instead of generalizing or turning that behavior into the person's permanent personality, into the person's character, I think wording and context always matters in these types of cases. So I hope I've been able to answer.
Awesome. So isolating issues rather than generalizing, and making it the brand of that particular individual, is something that the older generation should pay attention to. All right. So the fact that I did this, it's right. I mean, it's true. But they're now generalizing to say that, oh, I'm completely out of tune, might be something that we need to try and work at. Awesome. All right. So I will take our closing comments before I bring up the celebrants. There is no way we will have her and we will not take vintage wisdom, because she's an eternal excellency, a joy to many generations. All right. And so we're having her this year, with this topic. She just has to lend her voice. All right. So before I bring the celebrant up, okay, Mrs. Tosin Alexandra Ayomide, thank you so much. Wonderful time. I mean, it just looks as if it was a 30-minute discussion. Okay. So can I take your closing remark? Let me start with Ayomide. What would you like to leave with us?
Okay. I just like to leave with everybody that, like I had said at the beginning, generational gaps or generational issues, they are not issues to be solved. They are not problems to be solved. You need to be able to understand each other and understand perspective and understand that each generation is different, yes, but we bring certain values to the table. So that's just what I'd like to leave with everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ayomide. Thank you so much. That we just know that, I mean, we have values that we're bringing to the table, and when we understand each other, then it becomes sweeter. All right, Mrs. Alexandra Idowu, your closing remark.
Okay, so I'll just layer on what Ayomide has said to say that one of the things we should embrace whichever generation we find ourselves, is the word love. And I say that because if we know that our lives are a continuum, we are from one source and we are also going to be moving on and passing to the others. If we allow love, to undergird all of our conversations, our actions, our decisions, it will make it pretty much easier to appreciate and to cooperate with one another. So let love drive us even as we grow older and as we are younger, whichever generation we find ourselves. Let love move.
Oh, awesome, awesome. Love is not generational. Love has been existing before creation. Love is here. Love will be there when the world will come to an end. So let's love, all right, undergird all of our action, independent of the generation we find ourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, let's jam our hands for these two wonderful speakers as I have the honor and the privilege this evening to bring up the celebrants. Please let's hit the our chat room by welcoming the celebrants. Happy birthday, all of the kisses and the love from her grace. We have received grace. Mom, we're happy to have you.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Yes, ma, you
Thank you
have the
so much,
floor, ma.
TDC. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for showing up. The other time I was trying to check how many we were, 57. The last time I checked, we're 54 now. I want to especially thank our guests, and I want to thank Susie. I want to thank Ayomide. Thank you so much. Um, I heard when Tosin came on, she said, "Oh, sorry about my voice." Let me tell you what I like most about you today is your voice. Maybe initially you felt it was croaky, but your voice is what kept me glued to be listening in. I celebrate you. I celebrate your wisdom that you have brought to the table. And I don't know whether you saw my comment when you were taking your session, that you just spoke my mind. You really cut through it. That is exactly where I stand concerning this generational thing. I am thank you for bringing the balance to the table. Thank you for helping us to think like your generation people. I just pray that God will help us more, to be
Amen.
able to balance it. Quite
Amen.
a number of things that you also said, I stand there. One thing that stands out for me, what you said in particular, was about being the friend to our children, being their friend. That's the way we can bridge the gap. I know that I call myself, by reason of understanding and the clarity I have about my assignments, that I am a bridge. So I position in such a way that I want to relate with my, I, I, I set out wanting to be my children's friend, even before I ever had children. And not only to be my children's friend, I wanted their friends to be my friend because I know that that is how, I can have them. Friends will not come and then separate them from me. So their friends are my friends, and my children are really my friend, and I'm very grateful to God. And so everybody listening, I think we should take all of this nugget. To buttress what Tosin said, I have this scripture in First Kings. I don't know whether she referred to it when she was speaking, but this has always been my guiding principle. It's in First Kings chapter 12. I've not read, but I'll just share the story because I believe most of us here we are Christians. And even if you're not a Christian, it's a story of a king who died and then his son became the king. Just as in most of our lives, maybe your child takes over, and then he became the king. But in the days of the father rather, when he was the king, there was how he ruled. There was how he did his own administration. Like we said, generations are different. So in the days of Solomon, there was how he led the people. Then he came on board. This guy's name was Rehoboam. And so to start his administration, he had his colleagues. So a Gen Z becomes president today. I'm not sure you will find my type on his cabinet, right? But if who is my contemporary today, maybe he's president, you will find my type. And so his father had left. He became the king, and he brought his own team on board. We can also relate that to maybe like the corporate world. You are taking on a C-suite role, for instance. You come with your team. You know, they poach you from somewhere. They tell you to form your team, to come with the people that you know that can achievers like you, the team that will help you to achieve, right? So he had it. And then those ones came with the suggestion that, look, you know, we don't want your father. This is how he did it in his own administration. We want it this way. We want things to be like tougher for the people and all of that. And he said, just give me some time. I'll come back to you on what we're going to do. And wisdom said to him to call the older generation, the people who were there in the days of his father. And then he called them, and those ones gave him counsel. But by the time he was going to take this counsel, you know, to his colleagues, his own contemporaries, they threw it out and said, what are they talking about? In fact, we will make it hotter. And that was how he took only the counsel of his friends, and his administration did not succeed. That is my template. That is my guiding story. And how will I call it now? It's just my guiding principle. You cannot rule anywhere. You can't run any show with one generation. God is a God of generations. In actual fact, the minimum generation that God deals with is the God of 3 generations, right? So I have always had that in mind. And I think that is what I want to chip in for all of us. Whatever it is you are about, look, you cannot just run on your generation alone. Otherwise, you will be shortchanging yourself. They say what an adult sees when they are sitting down. When a child is standing, you still can't see it. They say that no matter how you have what we in our days, we call it baths. I also know some generation call it spoofs. I don't know what really it is right now. If you will help me, you know, no matter how you have the spoofs and you have these baths, you are a buffer. Abi, triplets, mommy. I heard you have triplets. That one just melted me. They know that I'm a multiple. I love you. I love the triplets even before I see them, and my love to them. Okay, so that no matter how you have these baths, there are plenty, right? But you can't have rags as much as the older person because they've been wearing clothes perhaps before you were born. So you cannot say they don't know what they're talking about when they're telling you, oh, don't pull it like that. Otherwise, you're going to lose that stitch because they've worn many. They pull zip in different ways that it had worn out. So when they're talking, I love this subject matter, and I really celebrate TEDC leadership. I celebrate you. I honor you. Yes, this talk is in honor of purpose. It's not really in honor of Pastor Mayoko, because for me, what birthday means to me is that purpose was born. Okay, so the purpose that I am here to run is what we're celebrating today. And you do this in honor, and I really appreciate it. But you see, this subject matter, I said to Dr. Buki behind the scene, and I think we should take this to our larger community, you know, our sister organization, the Christian body of us, that we should discuss it. It is so critical. In fact, men should listen to this because I think they have more problem relating in generational terms. Okay, so it's not so much about you just bringing your children to come and run your organization. It's not so much about that. We've seen people who have put their children on the board of their organization, they relinquish power to them, and the children have made a wreck of all that they have built because it just doesn't work just like that. There is need for stimulation, and I want us to take this away from here today that purpose will serve purpose, and purpose will always serve purpose. So my purpose is to serve the younger generation, while the younger generation's purpose as well is to serve the older generation, serve their contemporaries, serve the older generation and the much older generation. So I can't discard my grandmother's advice. My grannies on both sides are late, right? But I wish they were still around. There are things I'm doing today that I wish my grandparents could chip in. And so you find me relating with elderly people. I am big on older people. I love them because they will have the counsel to chip in. If nothing else, their prayer alone, I want their prayers over me. So I sow seeds, in particular, I clothe them. Somebody can go with that today. I buy fabric for them. It is said in my culture, in my language, or in my culture, that, children are the covering of the older one. So I sow prophetic seed, if you understand what that means, as a covering for them. When you bless them, when Isaac called for venison, when he called for that food, it wasn't so much about the food. Please don't forget that it was at the end of the day, it was Isaac's wife that cooked the meal. So he could have asked for that food from his wife, but he wanted something that will provoke. And that is what venison will do. So reach out to the older generation. Don't discard anybody. One of the things that Tosin said that struck me again was the mentoring thing. Mentoring is it. I am a product of mentoring. And right now I'm seated in the midst of about 20-25 of my mentees. Intentional. Mentor people. Don't just be a mentee. Mentor people. You get better in life when you teach other people. You get better in life when other people teach you. So I heard, as when it was said that the younger generation, maybe let's use as younger generation because it's only Gen Z that is, in that bracket of younger generation, that they're about speed and was it adaptability or what was the second one?
Yes, ma. Speed and adaptability.
And adaptability. And that we are about structures, right?
And systems, yes.
And systems. Which one do you think we should discard? There is no generation we should discard. So what we need to do is how to fuse ourselves, how to work it in one another. Don't we need speed? Anti-structure. Do you want the structure and be crawling like a snail? When are you going to get to destination? Anti-systems. Don't you want to be adaptable? So we need that adaptability. We need the speed. We need one another. So this song comes to mind. I can't sing it through, but those who know, I love you. You love me, and I need you to survive. So the generations, we need ourselves to survive. I'm trusting the Lord that we'll all go, and do more exploits about this. Just go learn more, and then not only just hear it. Please practicalize. Be real. Go after the younger generation. On my team, just this morning, for whatever reason, I realized that I'm gravitating more to the Gen Zs. In fact, yesterday we were cracking a joke 2 days ago, and I said, you guys are going to start, a center of the ministry. And they were like, yes, we're going to start our own center. They even said they want it in Ikoyi. I said, I'm for you. I'm moving right there. Because I don't want to grow old like that. I want to add numbers, but I don't want to grow. You get what I mean? I want to still be yuppie and young in everything. So don't grow old before your time. Grow old, but don't grow old. That is my little talk at this annual lecture that TEDC has organized. And please go out there and tell everybody about TEDC. It is the best business school in town. God bless you. Thank you, our GM. Thank you, my team. Thank you, everybody. Tosin and Ayomide, God bless you. Thank you so much for what you have brought to the table today. By the grace of God, your life will be preserved, and we will see you next year again at our annual lecture. God bless you. Thank you, everybody.
Amen. Thank you, Ma. Thank you. A big thank you to our president. I like what she said. She said it's not about birthday, but it's about purpose being born. That hits me, all right? And that has changed my perspective completely about birthday. It's about purpose. It's about what was in the mind of God when he put you together. Thank you, Ma. The Lord keep you for us. The Lord preserve you. The Lord make your voice relevant to all generations till the end in the name of Jesus. Awesome. All right. We want to thank you, everyone who made this call this evening. We want to thank our first time. We appreciate you, everyone coming for the first time. Once again, this is TEDC. All right. We have so many things lined up for us this year. Are you working and you're thinking of what do I need to do sideline? This salary is not enough. TEDC has the answer for you. All right. Are you thinking of, I don't even know, I'm in paid employment. How do I start business? All right. We have the answer in TEDC. I've been on this level. This is 2026. I need to scale up. please come to TEDC. So I want you to know that we're particular about both the enterprise and the entrepreneur. And as you relate with us, as you interact with us, you can never remain the same. So on this note, we want to say a big thank you once again to everyone, to the team, to the family. We want to say a big happy birthday to Pastor Mayokun. We want to appreciate our two wonderful facilitators, and we are just saying thank you. God bless us all. Good night. And this time, 2027, God willing, we will be here again on another one, the 9th Mayokun Oriofe annual lecture, by the grace of God. Bye.
Bye, everybody, and amen to that prayer. God bless you.
Amen. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Happy birthday,
Bye,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.